Now, what happens now? We know that Donald Trump cannot be president. We know that we cannot wait until January 19th. We cannot wait until January 20th. We cannot wait until Inauguration Day. He cannot be president right now. He should not have been president yesterday. He should not have been president the night of the attack. Because Republicans and the people around him are cowards, they will not do it. And in fact, the secretaries, there is something known as so when people say, how do we get him out? How do we get him out? There are actually several avenues. So through the House and congressionally, there's impeachment. Through the president, through the president's cabinet and the vice president, there's the 25th Amendment. And what the 25th Amendment allows is, for is essentially a majority of the president's cabinet and larger portion of the president's cabinet and the vice president have to move forward and declare the president essentially unfit, unwell, and that he must be deposed, or rather he must be removed from office. And that's what the 25th Amendment does. The president's cabinet, you have Secretary Elaine Chao, who is the wife of Mitch McConnell, by the way. Does that seem a little conflict of interest, inappropriate? I don't know. But regardless, she was the Secretary of Transportation. She resigned. Betsy DeVos has resigned. Acting Secretary of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has resigned. And all of them are resigning rather than fulfilling their duties in enacting the 25th Amendment and removing the President of the United States. I have a message for anyone who is resigning after Wednesday. Too late. Too late. You're not going to resign after Wednesday and act like you weren't a part of it. Were you secretary on Wednesday? Yes, you were. You were a part of it. Were you secretary every single step leading up to Wednesday? Yes, then you were a part of it. You don't get to allow for an attack that kills 5 people. And then afterwards, you say, I wasn't a part of it. Yes, you were. You were a part of it when you caged kids. You were a part of it when you repealed Title IX. You were a part of it when the president committed the first dozen number of crimes that he committed. You were a part of it when you excused the law breaking. You were a part of it. You were a part of it. You were a part of it. Those 5 people's blood is on your hands. What are you going to do? And they think that resigning is going to clean that blood off their hands. It is always on them. They are forever stained with the deaths of 5 people, especially when they did not invoke the 25th Amendment to remove this president when they had the power to do so. Cowards. Cowards. Couldn't even stand up in the memory of these officers that they pretend to care about. I don't want to hear or see the Republican Party talk about blue lives ever again. This was never about safety for them. It was always a slogan. Because if they actually cared about rule of law, they would speak up when people break the law. They would speak up. They would enforce fairness and equity, but they don't give a damn about the law. They don't give a damn about order. They don't give a damn about safety. They give a damn about white supremacy. They care about preserving the social order and the mythology of whiteness than the grandeur of our democracy. That's what they care about. They lust for power more than they care about democracy. That's what those people did when they voted to overturn the results of our free and fair elections. And you can barely call them that with the amount of voter suppression that they have engaged in across the country. It is generous, to say the least, to call them that. And so with all of the rules rigged in their favor. The Electoral College is built on a compromise with slavers. The Senate is rigged in their favor. Gerrymandered districts are rigged in the Republicans' favor. This presidency and the law breaking and the pardons of people who have betrayed our country, all of it rigged in their favor, and they can't even win with the whole deck stacked with them. They can't even win with the deck stacked in their favor. And so what they are willing to do is set a match and light our entire democracy on fire so that they can uphold the social order of white supremacy. That's what this is about. Straight up. This is about thinking that if an election doesn't reinforce your power, then you believe it is fundamentally illegitimate. And why do you think it's illegitimate? And how do you try to delegitimize our elections? By saying Black people shouldn't vote. By saying Latino people shouldn't be full U.S. citizens. By trying to strip citizenship away from people who already have it. We're not even getting to the denial of citizenship, a full civic personhood that this party engages in. We're talking about them trying to strip the citizenship away from anybody who isn't them. Anybody. And that's what this is about. That's what this is about. And that's what I mean when I say that their lust for power has driven them away from loyalty to democracy. So it's not just Trump that has to go. It's not just Trump that has to go. Because let me tell you something. When these rioters broke into our nation's capital, they flew the Confederate flag inside our nation's capital. Let me break down the historical significance of that for you. This happened. They flew the Confederate flag for the first time in American history in the U.S. Capitol. It didn't even make it in during the Civil War. And there were members cheering them on. Don't get it twisted. Don't let them act like they didn't. There were members who were supportive. You had a member of Congress from Colorado saying, "My people are outside." They flew the Confederate flag when it didn't even make it in during the Civil War. And they said, "Those are my people." So let me tell you something. Let me share this with every member of Congress who voted to overturn the results of our free and fair, again, a generous assessment election, to vote to overturn the results of our election. If any member of Congress so much as stutters to say that the Confederacy were traitors to the United States, that the Confederacy is a legion of white supremacists, if you so much as stutter to say that, turn in your pin and get out. Go join them. Why don't you go join them if you are so sympathetic to them? But you have no place in the capital of the United States of America, in the citadel of democracy, if that's the trash that you believe in. Because we will never go back. I'll tell you that right now. We will never go back. The only way forward is a multiracial democracy that fights for the economic rights of all people and the civil rights of all people. Period. And they would rather see our country burn than to see them be shoulder to shoulder equal to others. That is the tragedy of white supremacy. The tragedy of white supremacy is that it is doomed to fail. It's doomed to fail. White supremacists will never, ever, ever live in a world where they will see their fantasies come true. Ever. Which is why they rely on violence. That's why they cling to violence so much, because there is no other way for them. There's no other way. Every other way is democratic and cooperative, where we all must share our genius with one another, where our society is not built on supremacy or on a politics of domination of one another. And they can't live in that world. They can't live in a world without supremacy, without domination. They can't live in a world where they can just coexist. No, they have to reign supreme. And since a white supremacist world, and since supremacy in general is a myth, it will never be true for anybody. Since supremacy is a myth, they have to resort to violence. They have to. Because there is no other way for them. But you know what? What is the result of that? Nothing. It's nihilism. It's just destruction. And then what claim will you have? That you rule over a destroyed society? That the ashes belong to you? Never. Never. And so I want to be clear to Senator Ted Cruz. You do not belong in the United States Senate. I want to be clear to Senator Josh Hawley. You do not belong in the United States Senate. You do not belong in any democratically elected seat when you do not believe that that election was even legitimate, according to your self-serving claims. So get out. If they had any shred of integrity about their claims, their lies really, but their claims about this election, they would take off their pin and turn it in. But this isn't about the truth to them. This is about if they want to be president in 2024. Let me give you a sneak peek. You will never be president. You will never command the respect of this country. Ever. Ever. And you should resign. So should every member of Congress that voted to overturn the results of our election. Because they would rather cling to power than respect our democracy. That is putting the short term above the long term. And so many of our problems, so many of our global problems, our societal problems are all the way down, comes down to that. It comes down to that. It comes down to putting the short-term gain and prioritizing small short-term gains and allowing them and just grabbing at them at the expense of long-term structural losses, right? That's everything. Where we prioritize this quarter's profits over long-term economic well-being for all people, right? That's why they're paying people less than a living wage. Sure, it may boost up your Q1 profits, but what happens down the road when no one can afford your goods? Same thing with climate change, right? Where we're burning all the fossil fuels in the world, and we're clinging on to this system of fossil fuels because of the short-term profits that it bears, and we're allowing that to happen, even though we know that it's causing long-term destruction of our planet. Media, same thing. The short-term conflict-driven news cycles that get elevated every day that don't mean, frankly, shit. Sorry, I try not to curse on this thing, but I'm upset, as you can tell. And they bring up and froth up all of this short-term nonsense in our headlines, and they lose the long-term story every time, right? And then with our democracy, where you have members of Congress that are more interested in being, I don't know, a meme and driving a short-term news cycle and making policy decisions. And listen, I'm telling you this, I know as someone who wields social media, I understand that people may wield this critique about me, but I will tell you that when it comes to using social media, there's a very fine line between a member using it and social media using the member. And they are allowing themselves to be used, to be consumed, and to be radicalized, and to radicalize back. And they're making policy decisions based on that, instead of wielding it to speak to their constituents and make their case. Now, I know a lot of people may not understand that distinction, and so they're going to run off in all of these accusations, but I'm telling you how it is. And so what they're doing is that they're playing to cameras, and they don't care about actually being a damn legislator to serve the people of the United States of America. They don't care. If they cared, they would have certified our democratic elections. If they cared, they wouldn't have amplified the lie. If they cared, they would have protected their colleagues instead of tweeting out their locations for the mob to find them. If they cared, they would have done and acted with integrity, but they didn't. They don't care. They care about themselves. They care about their elections. They care about their next gig. They care about their money, their power, their fame. And this is how democracy can burn. It is fragile. We must cherish it. And they didn't. And they don't. So they need to leave. Donald Trump needs to leave. Ted Cruz needs to leave. Josh Hawley needs to get out. They need to get out. McCarthy, leader of the House Republicans, voted to overturn our elections. The same election that he was elected in, he voted to overturn. Steve Scalise voted to overturn our elections. Leaders of House Republicans, party leadership. This is like if Nancy Pelosi voted to overturn the results of our elections. You know, you have, each party has their leaders. Nancy Pelosi is leader in the House. McCarthy is the leader of Republicans in the House. Rather, Pelosi's leader of Democrats, and she's speaker. She's speaker of the entire House. McCarthy is leader of the Republican parties in the House. He voted to overturn the results of our election when his members were begging him for guidance. They were saying, what do we do in this moment? He did not provide any leadership to his own party. He cared about himself. He cared about supremacy. He cared about power and dominance over democracy. He needs to go. Scalise needs to go, along with anybody who sided with these Confederate traitors. A reminder that the Confederacy was not part of the United States, was never part of the United States, will never be a part of the United States. They are traitors to democracy. They are enemies of a multiracial democracy, and they will never have glory in our history, in our present, or in our future. Period.